Okay, this is the commentary track for the Gold Dragon Pandora. I'm going to start this one off with some AURIC Armor Gold. It's going to be 90% of the paint used on this model. Uh, to start, you notice that green stuff. It's exactly what it is, liquid green stuff. This dragon had a pretty big wing seam, so I plugged it as much as I could. Then I got lazy on the backside and didn't do it as much because the backside crack was not nearly as bad as the inner wing crack that I did end up filling. I mean, mine was wickedly wide, like a 16th of an inch. A couple other things to note in this video. I will be taking the base off this dragon, which I only thought of after painting. As you can see, I'm painting right now holding the base and realized how much of a pain it was going to be to get at the bottom with that base on. So we're going to see that later. And lastly, I don't know, I tried to center this painting as best as I could, but it was really high up on the top, and I apologize for that. Anyways, so I'm getting better at that. It's still kind of new. If you've never recorded yourself painting, it's tricky. So as you can see, generous heaping of this AURIC Armor Gold. This paint is very globular. It waters down quite a bit. And these wings, they're like sponges. They soak it. Like, look at me putting it on there, and it's literally dry. Like, it doesn't even look like it's on. So you want to put a lot on, but you don't want to put so much on that it looks blobby. Nice hand. You want to make sure that it goes on there. It doesn't look too globby because you want it to be thin, because we're gonna get like a cool gold leaf effect by adding some yellow shader to it later. So for now I just want it covering, and it should be thin because then the white primer or the gray primer that these Nolzur's miniatures come pre-primed as can shine through and give it like a little even lighter appearance. You can already see at the top, this paint is so reflective it naturally just looks like gold, and it's a really cool effect, even though it's kind of boring to paint because it's all one color. We're going to use other golds as well to amplify that. So RETRIBUTOR armor, spelling typo, missed the U. So you can see I pulled out a base off here, and we'll see that later. So I'm putting RETRIBUTOR armor on the bottom of his scales. And again, this is my poor camera work, I apologize. So here's the RETRIBUTOR armor going on. Do your best to not to be sloppy, but if you do, it's no big deal to just use the AURIC gold to touch it up when it dries. Again, I'm just putting the RETRIBUTOR armor on his bottoms, on his claws, and on his whiskers. It's just a different tone of gold, darker, and I wanted these areas to be, strong, stand out. So I did this on his horns as well, and then I'm going to touch up the horns and the base of his neck frill with a different gold. I think GEHENNA'S gold or GEHENNA'S gold later. Boy, kitty. So yeah, there it is, the GEHENNA'S gold on his horns. And even on parts that I've already used the RETRIBUTOR armor for, I use a little bit of GEHENNA'S gold. This is a fun thing with this paint job is it says it's shiny. It looks great no matter what, if you're using this color scheme. So you can't really go wrong. You just want to put different layers of gold on so that it's not just so monotone. See, now I'm running it up the front of his wings just so that they stand out a little bit from, and I'm using a little bit of a watered down GEHENNA'S gold blending into the AURIC's gold to kind of blend them together. Later on, I'm going to come back over that with the dry brush too. So this is me just correcting some spots. All right, there's his belly. Now I am using a shader here. It's just a Reikland flesh shade. I didn't make a tab for it. I was just trying different things. So Reikland's, I was like wondering what would Reikland's flesh shade from the Games Workshop paints do to the gold. But then I settled on AGRAX Earthshade. Now use a paper towel because you don't want too much. You don't want this thing to turn brown, or you don't want it to look dirty. Too much of this shade and it will kill the reflective properties of the gold paint. So I'm globbing it all on there, and I'm using that rag to soak up not only it off my brush, but I'm also literally dabbing it off the model if I put a little too much on, because you don't want it to turn muddy. Okay, so here we go. Down CASANDORA yellow. Now this is the great shade. Now this is the one that really makes the gold leaf shine. I put it on top of the AGRAX Earthshade in some places. I went up the wings themselves on his side of his body. This orangey yellow blends with that AURIC gold and makes a really cool two-tone effect. You can see it there nicely. Up in between his back crack, up along the wings as well. And in the sunlight, this thing just looks awesome. Don't go all the way to the top because you want the top of the tips of the wings to stay like super light, where even some of the primer shines through. That's cool too. But you can see we're wrapping up here, dabbing off any excess, don't want too much. And then I also used another coat of, golden griffin dry brush on the bottom scales. You know, it just adds a different element of gold, but it's not like the end of the world. I put a little on the front of his, see there as well, front of his wings with the dry brush. Ceramite white on the eyes, and that's it. Now he's done. Now here is me popping off that base. So use a toothbrush or something to just wedge it. It took a while. You can see this is time lapse, but I did get it off without breaking it. Now here's the buildup of the base. This is the fun part. So I use a MILLIPUT. It's an epoxy. You can get it online. I took the base, glued it to the part that comes with the nozzles, and I wanted to not have this floating piece of chewing gum, you know. And my goal was to make treasure piles around the gold dragon, because I figured if we're going to go gold, let's go balls in gold, yeah? So I bring him in once in a while just to make sure that my piles aren't hitting his body. And I'm just building it up and flattening out the area around the base so it's not just like a wad of chewing gum that's just floating in the center of a flat surface. So build up the piles. As the epoxy starts to set, it gets a little sticky. Just wet your finger and give it a little rub, and keep it coming. Now notice I've traced, see there's Pandora's human form. I've traced out her base where I want her to be so as to not accidentally build up on top of where she's eventually going to be. Again, throw Pandora's dragon form on to make sure that I'm not blocking any of the spots. Now it's time to paint the base with ZANDRI dust. The MILLIPUT hasn't dried yet. That's okay. You don't need it to. It's set firm enough. It's not going anywhere, and you don't have to glue it down. Once it hardens, it hardens hard. So here he goes. So AGRELLAN earth. Now this is a technical paint. It dries like a crack. I was trying to get like a cracked earth effect around the piles of gold. It worked okay, but there's so much in the way of it. The dragon and the treasure. You can barely tell, but you know, whatever. Bob's your uncle. So there's Pandora down. Yeah, she's got a space. All right, next morning it's dried. See the crack effect? Now putting the AURIC armor gold on as a base layer of the MILLIPUT. I'm planning on covering it with glitter, but if any pieces get missed or if any glitter falls off, I want it to not be like, you know, that color underneath. So I painted all gold. Go 360 degrees. Make sure you cover all your spots. Yeah, that paint's fun to work with if you like shiny things. Don't worry if you hit, in fact, I actually on purpose touched up on top of the dirt as well. Maybe or maybe not have glitter on top. That's okay. See, that's not a mistake. I wanted it to be tasty. Haha, see that joke there? Don't eat glue, peeps. Anyways, yeah, I put some of the gold paint on top of the brown crackies. That's okay. I wanted it just to look like a radiant pile. So I use a garbage brush to spread the glue all around. And then I'm about to dump glitter on it. This is fun. Unfortunately, I didn't film myself putting the rubies, sapphire. I put rubies, diamonds. You see the picture of them there? The gems, pearls, etc. I didn't film myself putting those on, but you can imagine what that looks like. So here we go. This is now the tiny. This is a Reaper Bones mini. This is Pandora in her human form. So you can see the colors that I've used there. I've UNGOR flesh, GEHENNA'S gold again. We've used most of these on the dragon as well. I wanted to bring the model to tie it to the big dragon as well. So I'm doing her greaves with GEHENNA'S gold. I didn't use that very much on the dragon, so I wanted it to stand up as much as it could. Thought about doing her like maybe a dark black and stuff, but it didn't make sense. Just gold the shit out of this project. Let's do it. So here we go. What are we doing now? Some more flesh. Find those little nooks and crannies. I think I had to glue that shield on when I assembled these. RETRIBUTOR's armor. Sorry again with the shitty camera work. So I'm putting her pauldrons with RETRIBUTOR's armor, just so that, again, it's a different tone. I'm going to do AURIC on her skirt, that chainmail. I think that looks really cool. And it mirrors the scales of the dragon, so that's why I used AURIC's armor. And I'm eventually going to use the Cassandra yellow again as the shade. All right, so her breastplate, can't do it all gold. So Iron Warriors, because I wanted it to be dark. I didn't want a light steel that would contrast, like it would blend too much with the gold or a silvery look. So I'm doing like this Iron Warriors paint to make it look super heavy. Excuse me. Evil Sun Scarlet, because, you know, why not? We got to throw some red in there. And this red just so awesome looking. It's like a blend of orange and red. And I also use the orange coming up as the layer for that as well. ZANDRI dust, that's the paint. ZANDRI, I always see ZANDRI, like a halo map. ZANDRI dust, that's the same paint as the base that we did before we put the gold piles on it. Okay, and a little bit of AGRAX Earthshade around that base once it's dried. Again, touching her belt, some RUNEFANG steel for her sword, just so it's not the same color as her armor. Remember, guys, if you don't have all these paints, you can just mix some whites and blacks into the paints you have to make different shades of the same paints. There's SQUIG orange. That's just for the pommel and to layer on her dress. And as I was saying, if you don't have hundreds of different kinds of paints, that's okay. Just take the red you have, add a little bit of red, white to it. Now you have a pinky red that's great to layer with. You don't need to have 9 different kinds of reds. All right, Iron Warrior on the shield, get the backside as much as I could. I know she was going to be kind of tucked up against the dragon, but, you know, when in Rome, man, paint it right, do it right. These miniatures aren't nearly as fun to paint as like Warhammer ones. They're kind of muddy because the features aren't as profound because the plastic is kind of soft. But do your best, and remember, these things aren't meant to be looked at under a microscope. So yeah, she's got a muddy face. Who cares? As soon as you put a foot from your face, she's going to look awesome. Especially once you glue her in with this dragon and the treasure piles. So I'm just touching up at this point and doing some layering. Again, she's very one-dimensional with just flat color, flat color, flat color. So I'm just going around and doing some touch-up works, any places that I've missed or spilled over. I think I used the RUNEFANG steel on top of the Iron Warriors to give the breastplate a little bit of a layered effect. I did gold for her eyes, thinking that she would have gold eyes in human form once she's, you know, good and all that. Once the story of her in the video is established, doesn't matter. You can't see it, and it looks like a mud puddle anyways. So here we are, just excuse me. Again, that's the pommel of the sword done in a brown. So again, touching up, doing some layers to her hair, different colors of yellow just to make it be blonde and not so flat. 30 seconds left on the video. Golden Griffin, so we're going to dry brush the front of that shield. My 10-year-old daughter had an idea to put one of the rubies from the treasure pile in the center of the shield. It was a really good idea. Thank you, Claire. So I glued that on there, but for now, dry brush the shield, then a little bit of Retributor armor on the front, little gem in the center. And I think that shield's actually got like a succubus on it. But you know what? It looks draconic enough. We're good with it. So here we go. That's it for Pandora human form. Here is the picture of what the final dragon looks like with the treasure pile. Again, see the rubies, the diamonds, the pearls, all things that the dragons like to eat. You can see the build-up at this angle, the different height. If you watch the reveal video, the 360-degree panoramic, you can see the different height levels. So if you have any questions, I know sometimes people have more questions about the painting than I go through in these little rush through videos, but please just write in the comments below. I'll respond back to you. I've got nothing better to do right now anyways, and I want to help and I want you to be happy. And anyways, thanks for taking the time to watch this. I'm GMA Tank. We'll talk to you next time.